A beautiful morning, oh, what a beautiful day. Somehow I just feel like singing, everything's going my way. Is that how you're feeling today? Hope so. I would like you to look at putting your cell phones on vibrate, and you have my handout sheets with you with my phone number at the bottom. We'll be taking questions. Delaney would like you to write them down on those question cards that you have. If you don't have a question card close to you, you can send me a text, and when it comes to question time, I'd be happy to answer that for you. When we were putting this presentation together, we said, well, how are we going to frame this? What are we going to package it as? And Delaney thought the word instigate was a good word to use. And I've been working with farm families now as a coach since 2003 when I got certified. And I've been married to Wes for over 30 years, so I've been a farm woman, married at a seed business in southwestern Manitoba where we didn't plant a crop this year, really. 500 acres was all we got in. And I also have been a farm kid ever since I came into this world. And so I have a lot of stories of my life experiences that I would like to weave for you this morning in the short 50 minutes that we have together to talk about instigating. And if you look it up in the dictionary, instigate is to bring about by incitement. And my 3 words for living this year are radical, relationship, and self-care. And I would like you to sit this morning and think about what's your theme as a business person this year in your farm family. Because my goal, and any of you have watched my writing in Grain News or Hearts of the Country or watched me on Ag Vision TV, you know that I'm relationship-based. And we can talk all you want about production and technology, and you're getting that insight today, but I'm here to help give you some really common sense tools on building relational capital. Because I don't care what your net worth statement is, if your daughter-in-law is leaving, divorce is expensive. If your wife who's been married to you for the past 42 years wakes up and says, honey, if you buy another combine, you're going to be living in the hopper. And that's not a direct quote from Elaine Froese. A guy told me that this morning in the hallway. I get my best quotes from you people. So the stories I'm going to share with you this morning are talking about fueling up something that you actually are going to make drastic change in your life. We want to instigate you to be able to figure out what it is you really want. And it changes. My friend who's a chicken farmer in Manitoba said, Elaine, we're not 21 anymore. Yeah, and those of you who tried to get up this morning after all the partying you did last night are kind of figuring that out. Okay? So this morning I just want you to sit with the sheet that they've given you in your package, your key challenges audit sheet. I know that you're used to talking on your cell phones, taking orders, and doing 2 things or 3 things at once. But the key challenges sheet is an audit that I've come up with that I use with every family I work with to figure out what is it that's keeping you awake at night and what are your key challenges, but what is it that you really, really want? So I want to go through sort of 10 tough issues and tools that will help you in a very practical way. And in Australia they have a saying, common sense, uncommon practice. Much of what I share with you this morning is not going to be new. But I don't want you to go to any more seminars without acting. I had a woman from North Battleford for me say, Elaine, I'm not going to any more beep-beep seminars. I said, what happened? And she said, well, Jack keeps coming home and it just never changes. And I've been sitting here as the chief emotional officer and the family social worker for the last 25 years, and I'm done. I said, oh, when's Jack ready to make the call? Or George or Betty? And if I use people's names, I know there is a Jack sitting in the audience. His last name is Froese, and he's a good friend of mine, so it's not that Jack I'm talking about, okay? I'm just using people's names to tell you stories. So these are the tools I want to talk to you about this morning. First of all, you have to decide. You have to decide that it's time that you're going to take charge of the poor conflict resolution in your family. You have to decide that it's okay to talk about your feelings. And it's nice for those of you who are really factually oriented to start with the facts. So I'm just curious, after you've started to work on your year ends for December for family living, did you spend $28,500 last year on living in Saskatchewan? Or was the number $75,000? It was likely closer to $65,000, $75,000. Do you know what that number is? because you can't talk about making changes unless you have things that you can measure. You also need to be ready. And those of you who know me well know I love books. 2 things in your life will impact you the most. The people you meet, really nice seed growers from Lucky Lake, Saskatchewan, and the books that you read. And one of the books I'm reading right now is called Fast Influence by Michael Pendleton. And he says you can change anything and anybody, but you have to be ready. So I want to make this easy for you. Are you ready? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being, yes, Elaine, I'm calling a meeting tomorrow, how ready are you to start having those tough conversations in your farm business that you need to have? 3? 4? Why didn't you say 2? Some of you in your heart, maybe you said 9. You're ready because you just got a call from your doctor last week that says you have melanoma and he has to do deeper surgery. You're ready because the neighbor just died in a PTO accident. I was speaking in Westlock, Alberta in November, and 3 days before I got there, a young farmer with 1,500, just tons of cows, feedlot operation from Neerlandia had just got himself entwined in a fatal accident. And there were 243 people at that seminar. I do not want death, cancer, heart attack, and stroke to be your motivator. I just want you to decide that today's the day. And when you talk to bringing in your family members, use curiosity. I'm just curious. Do you think we could start having some regular meetings on Tuesday mornings? We'll do succession planning meetings the first Wednesday of the month, and we'll do operational on the third Wednesday of the month. You'll be taking the email notes. They'll go out to everybody, and it'll be a great time. So when you come up to somebody and say, hey, you never do anything right out here, and by the way, blah, 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 are you going to get anywhere? Sean doesn't have to answer this. He's just the chair, okay? He just has to be the closest person to me because there's this huge gulf in front of us of no people. I'm curious. When do you think you might be ready to move to town? Never. I'm curious. When do you think, Dad, you might be wanting to retire? Never. Good, now I know. So let's work with that plan based on what Dad's telling you. Dad's not letting go, and he's not retiring, and he's not reinventing himself. Last night on the bus, there was a man in front of me. His father just died, 101. Okay? And he loved his dad, but it's still hard, no matter how long or how old we are, to be able to let go, to shift. Identify those conflict triggers. What is keeping you up at night? That's why I've given you this sheet. And it's not a solicitation for business. I'd be happy to have a 15-minute complimentary phone call with you. But I'm not looking for more work, because taking stock in Saskatchewan is now paying for consulting fees for succession planning. You read about it in Pulse Points. I wrote an article for you about it. And there are lots of families that are finally waking up to saying, wow, if the Saskatchewan government's going to help me pay for some of this facilitation, let's get at it, Charlie. The problem is you have to identify what are those triggers. So that's why, is it a better understanding of how to be fair to family members? Likely is. If it was always your dream to treat every kid with 1/4 of your farm, you are not going to chop up your farm into 4 pieces. But you have 4 kids. So what are you going to do? You're going to start from curiosity, and you're going to seek common ground. What's the common interest of this Pulse farm? To be viable, to be profitable, but also to have family harmony, I would hope. And if you don't have family harmony, why not? I would just really encourage you to say, Elaine, I just don't think things are going to change, but I'm here to tell you things can change, but you have to decide. And you have to be clear, which is why I asked you right at the get-go with those 2 Angus bulls. What do you really want? Because those bulls weren't fighting. They were just putting their heads together. This is my back porch. When is the last time you really sat down and listened to what the other people on your farm team were sharing with you and what they needed? Are you actually listening to what your accountant is telling you? Do you have a good accountant? And I have a book table outside, and I'm here for the afternoon to visit with you if you like. But I'm a member of the Canadian Association of Farm Advisors, and I have a book called Cultivating Business. I'll give you away the copies I brought with me. But if you don't like the people in your team of advisors, get new ones. Get better ones. And the website is CAFA, C-A-F-A, net.com. And if you need a referral to a good financial planner, a good lawyer, a good accountant, copy Success. Talk to the people in your peer network that you feel comfortable with. It also talks about feelings. They go, oh, Elaine, you're not going to get all touchy-feely about this, are you? Absolutely. Because my friend Pierrette Durocher, who's a clinical psychologist who works with farmers in Quebec, and I've written about her, she says 80% of decisions are emotional, which is why there's green tractors and a lot of stuff up here. See, there's one right there. And I drive a John Deere tractor until last June when our John Deere tractor burnt to the ground, when it got too much mud in the manifold, and so now we have a red tractor. But we still have green tractors, and I'm not here to tell you what kind of equipment to buy. I'm just telling you guys that there are a lot of decisions that you're making that aren't strictly based on fact. Then I'm interviewing a farm family. When I'm coaching a family, I meet individually with the parents, the founders, the couples, everybody who's involved in that business. And it really, really slays me when I hear a young man in Saskatchewan say, Elaine, I came back because I was invited back. I have a degree, I'm well educated, I could do lots of other things. But you would not believe how my father approaches me when he gets angry with me. That F-bomb is coming fast and furious. And I said, excuse me? And some of you think that's funny. I don't think it's funny at all. I want you to read toilet paper. I want you to be soft on the person, but hard on the problem. Just like toilet paper. Okay, now these props are pretty basic. You guys are going to see this for the rest of your life. And every time you go to the can, you can think of me. I'll be honored. But that's not my point. Okay? My point is that we have to start treating people with respect, because there are other options for your father, your founders, your spouse, your daughter-in-law, your son, your daughter who's taking over, whoever it is. She has other options. He has other options. Treat people by being soft on the person but hard on the problem. Another one is to play with possibility. When I'm talking about such serious, heartfelt issues, I have a lot of toys. And I'd like you all to find something soft that you can use in your family meetings. And Wes and I just spent a month in New Zealand, and we're visiting some farms. And we went to a boardroom, and I was so delighted to see a possum sitting in the middle of the table. It wasn't a real one. It was a stuffed one. And even in New Zealand, they've caught on to the fact that talking sticks are a good thing, because when I hold this, I get to talk. And then Sean says, Elaine, give me the bowl. I give Sean the bowl, and he gets to talk. And it keeps the energy in the room going around. It's also, you're all positive about agriculture, but how positive are you about talking and instigating about the tough issues in your family? And why are you avoiding it? Well, my son decided to go to U of S, and he met some girl, and now they're getting married, and things were great before he got married. Are you prejudging the marriage? Poor girl hasn't even signed her prenup yet. And maybe she doesn't want to either, okay? But if you are already prejudging the situation, I do this with my clients. I put my hand in my face, and I want you just to be honest this morning, folks, with what filters you're wearing. No woman who steps foot in this farm is ever going to handle the books. Or no man is ever going to set that combine, because they can't do it as good as I can. Whatever filter you're using, you're going to have somebody come and help you clean the filter that you have for communication, just like you change those filters on your combine. Okay? And I would like to say personally a big thank you to Honeybee, because we use Honeybee headers, and they're the sponsors of this session. Build understanding by checking assumptions. So here's a little story for you. I'm sitting with a cattle family, and the dad says, son, I am going to give you the $200,000 cattle herd because that's what I've always wanted to do. Well, no, Dad. I've gone to FCC. I found some lending guy who's going to give me $200K, and my wife's got a great job, and the kids are in daycare, and we live in a much nicer house than you do in town, and you and Mom really don't need to be living in the shack anymore. What do you mean, son? You don't expect me to give you everything? He says, Dad, I'm 33. I have the next 33 years to manage my debt. Mom's broken. She's lived in this trailer for too long. She needs a good house. Really? Really, Dad. I've already checked it out. Well, then we can go build the house in the Bush Quarter, the one your mom's always wanted? Yes, Dad. and we'll still work together, and it'll be great. Just want you to sit with that. That was an actual coaching conversation, happened years ago during calving season when we used to break up the family meetings to go and pull calves. And the father had it in his head there was only one way to solve a problem, by rolling things over. And the son said, "No, Dad, that's an assumption you need to stop having." So this morning I want to challenge you, what assumptions do you have? What interests and feelings do you need to share with the rest of your farm team? There's some of you in this room assuming that you have no successor because it's pretty real that you don't. Well, have you thought about a joint venture partnership? And if you email me and put joint venture in the subject line, be happy to mail you the PDF of the Country Guide article where Myron Tanecki and two of his business partners, Myron lives in Victoria, he's a farmer from Saskatchewan, and has set up an amazing business. There's lots of websites like Thinking for Results that you can go to as well. The other thing I want you to understand is you can't ram what you want through. It's like going through a canola field at 6 miles an hour when you got a crop that needs about 3 because it's such a wonderful crop. You can't plug up your combine because you know that's going to give you downtown, right? You can't ram things through. So some people's communication style is to ponder and to not want to be prodded. They need time to let those thoughts percolate. So again, in my book, I have a communication styles assessment, and if you email me, I'd be happy to send it to you digitally, and you can print off as many copies as you want and do a self-assessment, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The other thing I want you to figure out is that people change, and I was working with a bunch of consultants in Alberta, and the man came up to me and said, "Elaine, do you have a book on menopause?" I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "I want to give all of my male clients a good book on menopause because I can't stand this hormonal, yes, we're doing it, no, we're not." And I'm not just saying women have problems with hormones. Men apparently have andropause. But the problem is that there's lots of physical stuff, folks, going on in our bodies as mom and dad are aging and as we're aging. And you need to consider the other person's perspective. And there are a lot of women who are tired of the off-farm job, supporting the cash flow, raising the kids, and trying to make things work if this farm is not profitable and viable. And they say, the madness has to stop. And then there's the guys who are also tired of the oil patch jobs, the off-farm work, and trying to keep the cash flow going. So I want you to be kind to each other and consider and check in with the other person. What is their perspective? And then when it all gets quiet, you just let it be quiet. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. And you say, is there anything else? And all of you guys who are on the directors with Pulse Growers know that some of your best Pulse Growers board meetings are in the parking lot after you're leaving the meeting. Because you've had some more time to sift and think, and that's where the good ideas are coming from. Now, many of you will recognize this barn, being north of Saskatoon, between Regina and Saskatoon, the Risk and Hope Farm. You're taking lots of risks, and the dollar signs on your balance sheet are getting larger and larger. But I want you to start seeing having these tough conversations as a business risk management strategy. That if you get really good at conflict and talking about these key challenges, you're going to have the most amazing life. Because conflict is now going to be something not to be avoided. It's going to be a tool that you are going to get better at. And I'm convinced whether you're 42, 32, 62, or 82, that you can do that. I also want you to think about how you're being accountable to each other. And if you decide to go home from this Pulse Growers meeting and say, Elaine Froese said I need to do this, this, and this, I'm calling a meeting, and nobody else wants to show up, you start having your own meetings anyway, by yourself. Get your own affairs in order so that you have a strong foundation to come to when you can finally convince the rest of your team that you want to do that. I also want you to know that Patrick Lencioni, who's come here to speak in Saskatoon before, he's a big guru down in the States. He wrote Overcoming 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. He has written out what he considers the 5 main dysfunctions, and one of them is trust. Can I trust you, son, after building up this business for 35 years, that you're just not going to sell everything out in the next 5, or that you're not going to lose everything in the next 10? So you need to talk about that. And you say, wow, Dad, where did that come from? He said, well, you know, son, my dad died when we were young, and I've been doing this ever since I was 21, and I'm just feeling a little bit antsy about whether or not you're ready. Well, have you proved it? Is there a culture of fairness, respect, and commitment in your farm team? If that's missing when I start visiting and doing the pre-work with families, I have some real hesitations. Because if that culture isn't there, you're going to be working from a negative space. So these cards are just a way, I'll just go back for a second, are what I call my undiscussable cards. So Patrick Lencioni, he talks about 5 dysfunctions. Trust. He also mentions attention to detail, but he mentions fear of conflict. I have a little Irish in me. My name might be Froese, but I come from an Irish-Scottish background. I had a mother who looked me in the eye and said, we're going to talk now. Okay. So my whole culture of how I do conflict, to me, conflict's not a bad thing. But I've also done quite a bit of training in Winnipeg, and if you want to take your wife to a nice spa, go to the 10 Spa in Winnipeg at the Hotel Fort Garry, and then during the day, both of you go to 1900 Portage Avenue and take 2 days of how to deal with difficult people. You can write it off as a farm expense. Go to the spa, write it off as a farm expense, and go to resolutionskills.ca. I have had guys from all the way across BC, all across the prairies do this, and they phone me up later and they say, Elaine, should have done this 10 years ago. I said, yeah, it's really good when you can start doing fighting fairly and well. So these cards are just issues that the key challenges, the audit sheet that you have in front of you. Once you've decided between you and your spouse or on your own what the issues are, you can put them on a card. And you can literally put that card on the table. Because this is the card that it goes with this slide, respecting boundaries. It's called workload style. Do any of you who are my age, 55 or older, realize that your son and daughter doesn't want to work as hard as you do? Amen. Oh, someone even put their hand up. Okay. Because the next generation, the kids who are born since 1980, the millennials, the Gen Y, Gen X, they want to work differently and at a different pace. And they don't want to put in 100-hour weeks all year round. So that creates a lot of conversations that need to be instigated. So when you're talking to your son or your daughter who's succeeding you, you need to be clear. Are you talking to them as the dad or as the mom, or are you talking to them as the business partner? So we have a business and we have a family. And in farm families, they're highly linked, just like this chain. And so we always need to be keep working as, am I speaking to you as my business partner, my next shareholder, or is this a family issue? And try and keep those separate. I'd also like to share with you that if any of you go to Prairieland Park again later today or tomorrow, you should drop into Myers Norris Penny if Bob Tosh is there and speak to him. Because Myers Norris Penny has a new human resource training program that they're doing for farmers. And also Don McCannell from McCannell Financial Group here in Saskatoon has a new group of human resource. Because this whole thing about making your relationships in the farm business team more professional is really, really important. Because the kids who've left the farm for 5 years or 3 years, they know what a performance appraisal is. They know this work style isn't the best way of doing things. And there's all kinds of tools and documents that could help you out. Another thing is to respect boundaries. And I would like to announce that I'm the favorite daughter-in-law in the Froese family. I'm the only one. It was a really good relationship. But you know, Wes's mom was the kind of person who would always settle accounts quickly. And so from her, I learned a really good mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship. And if any of you sitting in this room are daughter-in-laws and you want to be part of my focus group, I invite you to talk to me later. Because one of the things that's happening in Saskatchewan, folks, is that daughters and sons-in-law are starting to withhold grandchildren as a weapon of mass destruction. You want to see your grandchild? Then you better be giving me that $100,000 quarter by Friday. And you're going, who are these people? Well, they're nasty. But there's also that sense of entitlement that nobody wants to talk about it. And now that land is more expensive because your values have finally caught up in Saskatchewan, FCC came out in November, 11% was the increase of value. I don't have to tell you that. That's not rocket science news to you. But what happens with increasing land values is people start coming home. And they say, I want a piece of this, or I want it now, or I want it promised to me, or whatever. So you've really got to be really, really clear about your expectations. And then the other part of this is confidentiality. If you tell me something, it stays with me. I'm not the messenger for the rest of your family. And also, stop gossiping about each other. That is not helping your toilet paper situation, okay? That is not helping you be good with the person. Now, there's lots of research in the States that also shows that you need to extend the olive branch in terms of when you do make a mistake, when you do cause offense, you need to make an apology. So my question for your family is this. In your family, in your business, on your board of directors at Sask Pulse Growers, what is your model of forgiveness when someone really makes a huge mistake? When our employee jumped out of that burning tractor on June 23rd, he apologized that he didn't put the fire out quickly enough. He had a little bit of water, but now every tractor in Boissevain has a fire extinguisher in it. Okay? A mistake was made, the mud built up, he'd been checking it, but there was just that one time it didn't get checked, kaboom. Brand new tractor in flames. Are we going to fire this guy for burning up a tractor? No, but we're going to set some parameters and things in place to make it better. The other thing with the price of land in Saskatchewan and your bank account is that's not only what your business is about. Your business has also got other pieces of legacy, things like your values, the character you want to pass on, the possessions that have sentimental meaning to you, grandpa's gun, the old cars, the old tractor, whatever it is that's important to you, the roll-top desk that you're taking your brother over to court for, and your wishes to be fulfilled. So if any of you want a really good project this winter, go to this website, rightrisk.org, and figure out how to get all of your existing documents in order. Now, we don't have clickers here today, but typically I have turning point technology, and I would ask you this question now. How many in this room have a valid, up-to-date will? Can wiggle your right foot? Oh, you guys put your hands up? That's lovely. Most audiences I speak to, 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 do not. And that's just chaos. So please start doing your homework. The other part about instigating these conversations, why it's so overwhelming, is because there's many different kinds of communication plans, okay? So a family charter is what do we want this family to look like? A code of conduct, there's a book at the Canadian Farm Business Management Council. The website is farmcenter.com. They have really good agri-webinars that you can also get to. The code of conduct is how much money can we spend? Can I spend $5,000, Sean, without telling you about it? Like, what's the code of conduct for how we manage money in this farm team? These are all conflict triggers that families get tied up in and make problems, okay? How are we making decisions? I have a farmer from Saskatchewan here who's been very, very, very successful. Unfortunately, he woke up one day and found out he was 75. He says, Elaine, I'm tired. I don't want to be the main manager anymore. We had 4 family meetings trying to get a new main manager. Hasn't worked very well yet because everybody likes dad taking care of them. Nobody wants to do the work. And I want to really honor all of you founders, women and men, who've worked really, really hard. And you have a lot of wealth, but you can't enjoy it because you don't know how, and you also want to give and help out the next generation, and you're really conflicted about money stuff. So another website I want you to go to is moolala.ca. I want you to buy the book, Why Smart People Do Dumb Things with Their Money. It's by Bruce Zellery. moolala.ca. Because you need to figure out what money means to you. Because money is energy to do good things, philanthropy, help the poor, buy more land, help your community, get the next generation started, bless your grandkids. But you know what money means to you. Because if you aren't on the same page with your spouse, there's going to be a lot of conflict there. And maybe you also woke up to the fact that money cannot buy you good health. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, your health is your wealth. So my challenge to you this morning is figure out what's stressing you out, figure out your money attitudes, and figure out how you're going to communicate that with your spouse and with your family. Because you've got some serious decisions to make. My 75-year-old father, who's been very blessed with how his farm has been going, has almost come to the decision that he's about ready for a joint venture. He wants to work with people who want to do business and management, and he'll keep working, but he just doesn't want to be the main manager anymore. And his accountant started calling him the benevolent dictator. I thought that was an awesome description. He's a benevolent dictator. He's kind. He gives his girls $40,000 every year, come rain or shine. Would you like to have a dad that was just writing you a check every year for 40 grand just because you were the kid? These families exist, but they're still not happy because they haven't been able to transfer and give those things. So my question to you is this morning, why are you not talking? What's keeping you from those crucial conversations that in your heart of hearts you know you need to have? Why are you keeping problems secret? Well, because in our family, nobody else needs to know. Really? That stress that's giving you asthma and about to kill you is a good idea. Not. We're too busy, Elaine. We don't have time. We got seed grower meetings to go to. We got to go to Pulse Days. We've got to go and play hockey. I had one farmer who had the audacity to sit on that couch and say, Elaine, the reason I don't have a will is I've been taking the kids to hockey. I said, good grief. That's really too bad. I want you all right now to write down on a piece of paper that by February 15th you will have made an appointment with your lawyer. Write it down right now. If you have not got a will, you don't have a will because you're not talking, because you don't want to upset your sister, because you don't want her to take care of your kids if you die. That's the real reason you don't have a will. The other reason you don't have a will is because if you make one, you'll die. Did you know that? That's what the farmers in Ontario told them in a Guelph study way back in 1997. The other reason you're not talking is that if we talk and get plans in place, then we actually have to activate them. And I don't want to be pushed out. So that's why that conversation with the bull is so important, because when Dad says, oh, by the way, I'm never retiring, you go, good. Now that we have that clear, let's talk about what you are going to be doing. So Wes, I don't know if he's in the room somewhere. He's my husband, and he tells stories about Dad all the time. But Wes's dad took 110 feet of harrows, and when we came to the field, the end looked like this. And we said, Dad, what did you hit? He said, I don't know. Dad, you hit something. He hit a hydro pole, but he didn't quite know it. His tractor driving days were over. That didn't mean we disrespected him. That just meant his role was going to be different. Okay? So let's capture this phrase. Different is not wrong. It's just different. Can you all say that with me? Different is not wrong. It's just different. Because the next generation is going to bring new ideas. There's also going to be some unaffordable lifestyle pressures if there's divorce, or if there's stuff happening in the family where the expectations for a new kitchen every 5 years is a little bit too much. And then there's also some things that I've learned from my accountant friend in Quebec is what I mentioned earlier about, can the next generation actually take this over? Well, you're training them, you're mentoring them. There's all kinds of resources available to you. Farm Leadership Council has webinars. Agra webinars over at the Canadian Farm Business Management Council. There's no end of opportunity to mentor and learn, but you have to be intentional to get it done. When I took my coaching certification back in 2003, I did two things. I looked after my family and I studied. I didn't go to parties. I didn't do all the social things. I had to make adjustments to have the discipline to get the education I wanted to be able to help farm families. And you can do that too. Another concern, of course, is being fair, which I mentioned before. And in my book, Do the Tough Things Right, fairness is the first chapter. And I have a tool on sweat equity by Dr. John Baker from the University of Iowa. Send me an email and just put Dr. Baker in the subject line, and I'll send you an Excel spreadsheet where you can take your net worth when you guys started farming when you were in your 20s and all the next 10-year gaps up to whatever age Dad is now, and you can show Mom and Dad that you've been there for the last 10, 15, 20 years creating and capturing and keeping that wealth. And they would not have been able to do that had you not been there. And all the young farmers going, yes, Elaine, love it. And all the old guys are going, oh, what am I going to do with the kids who aren't farming with me? Because the kids who aren't in your farm business absolutely Do not want to hear that term, sweat equity, okay? So Canadian Federation of Independent Business did a study, and they found that some of the barriers to getting this hard work done, of talking about these things, was financing. There's no excuse with the interest rates the way they are and the young farmer programs in place that you can't go to a credit union, a bank, or FCC or somewhere and find cash to make this happen. And if any of you have followed Merle Good, he has a whole new model for holding companies and personal wealth bubbles that can make this happen. Some of you will not be able to find a leader for the next generation, so you need to start working on that project. Some of you, of course, are just going to stay the same, not change, and just carry on, and that's fine. But the next generation is going to continue on with the way they want to be too. And so you might just decide to disagree. And you may butt heads on some issues and say, okay, you know what? We're just going to park this. We're just going to agree to disagree. And that's what you're going to do. Access to cost-effective advice has never been easier now with the Taking Stock program. So I'd like you to write this number down. It's 1-866-457-2377. I'll say it again. 866-457-2377. And what that number is the Ag Knowledge Center for Saskatchewan. Two things. I'm coming back to Saskatoon January 23rd and Regina January 24th to spend 4 hours on what we're trying to skip through this morning on who gets the farm and when, on instigating these decisions. But also, if you call that number or Google Taking Stock, you can have some access to that financing that I talked about. So, what does a good day look like to you? For my father, who just passed away on November 1st, a good day for Norman Eady was 3 hot meals and a bed to sleep in. He was born in 1926. His needs were very simple, very basic. Okay? But what a good day looks like to you now may be different a few years from now. But let's just start with 2012, okay? Let's start with grabbing that bowl in the middle of the room. This one, by the way, is from Switzerland. I collect toy bowls. This one was handcrafted for me. Fairness, sweat equity, lifestyle. Had a family meeting once where the mother and father had 3 sons sitting in the room, cattle grower, and he says, oh, by the way, kids, Mom and I expect $120,000 a year draw from this farm. And all the boys were going, their chins were on the carpet. So a couple of years later, I checked in and I said, what did the number actually become? The actual number was $38,500. So lifestyle needs, folks, are really going to kill you because those Chevy trucks, Duramax diesels, whatever you're driving, I don't get a commission from Toyota because I drive a Toyota. Doesn't matter what you're driving. If you don't have a handle on it, that's some of your viability and profitability. The other thing that's stressing you out is, Elaine, I don't know where to start, which is why Delaney invited me to come. Chinese have a saying that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And as a coach, I would say to you, how are you doing? You tell me what you're doing now, and I say, what do you think the next step is? And you just keep taking the next step. I have 2 books. Did I write those books overnight? The first one took me 10 years. I've been writing now in Grain News for 17 years, which is the same amount of time for those of you who remember Marie Solway, who wrote Butter Side Up. And when Marie was dying of cancer, she said, Elaine, I want you to take my place. And I said, whoa, those are pretty big shoes to fill. But here we are now, in 2012, 17 years later, and I'm still writing the column. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is the time is now. And all of these different plans, you can just keep taking the next step. Go home and look at your business plan. Look at what your transition financing options are. Talk about your communication plan. Please start talking and understand that transferring ownership, labor, and management is succession, and it's for the living. Estate planning is for the dying. Those are 2 different plans. And if you have a father or mother who's become very dominant and says, I'm not doing a thing because I'm just going to leave it all to you in the will or make my own decision, that's not good. You want to try and get a plan in place for the living, okay? I want you also to take leadership in your families. Do the tough things right. You had discussions this morning about herbicide resistance. You're all really good with Roundup because Roundup works in 10 days and you do this, this, and this right, and kaboom, it's done. It works, usually. And people will come up to me and say, Elaine, can't you give me a checklist to help my family? I said, no, because every family's unique and different. There's tools we can use, but we have to understand that you have to start the conversation and you need to be the leader. And you need to be intentional about timelines. As founders, it's about what we're going to live on, what are we going to do with the non-business heirs, and where are we going to live. But for young farmers, it's just to be heard and respected. When I have daughter-in-laws fill out this sheet, they go straight to the bottom. And in red ink, they write, respect. And a daughter-in-law went to a seminar and she said, I'm working at the bank and I'm just not sure. Are we a good farm? Do we meet our bills? Nobody tells me anything. I'm really out of the loop. In the parking lot, her father-in-law came up to her and told her what their net worth was and said, you never need to worry. And she said, thank you, because I'd just like to know some of the basics. So think about who you're not keeping in the loop. I had a farm kid who was 33, supposed to be the next successor. I said, so what do the books look like? And he looked at me square in the eye and says, Elaine, I'm 33. I've been working with my father since I'm 18. I've never seen the books. And I said, well, that's unfortunate because then that makes you an employee, not a successor. What's the ability to grow debt? Those of you who were born in 1926, 1936 can remember 1981 and 19% interest rates. You got to get that monkey off your back. Wes and I were married when I was a government employee making 19% interest on my savings account. My expenses per month were $125 a month for living. I came to our marriage with a nice chunk of cash saved up because I was on the savings side. Wes, of course, was on the other side, right, at 18%. So I want you to think about what your attitudes are about debt because that is also stopping you about instigating the decisions that you need to make. And I really want you guys to lighten up and have some fun. So go out and for $1.52, you can be like this. And I have a friend, seriously, who travels all over the world with one of these in her purse. Because every once in a while you need to pull this out to remember that why are you working so hard? What is your legacy going to be if it's for naught? And then the other thing the young farmer wants is they don't want a lot of hassle because the other thing we've done as 55 plus is that we spoiled our children. We're the boomer kids who've given our kids really good lifestyles. And so that's the lifestyle that they hope to maintain or even more. And so then you have a fight about sense of entitlement. So my next book is going to be called The Curse of the Coddled Child. I've got one buyer over here, and she's going to help me write the first chapter. Okay? So building relational capital is very interesting because appreciation is what everybody's looking for in those conversations. When is the last time you told your spouse you appreciated them? I was on TV in New Zealand with the Minister of Economics from the Department of Agriculture, and I got him to say, I love you on television to me. And I just met the man 5 minutes ago. And I was just trying to make the example of showing appreciation, putting your feelings on paper costs you nothing except instigating that intentionality. But if you're not going to be intentional about it, your people are going to leave your team. And this is one of the key factors why plans fail. So build that capital. Discuss all of these things on this audit sheet. If you do nothing else from this presentation this morning, please at least complete this sheet so that you start getting clear about what that bull is. Is it the successor? Is it fairness? Is it communication? Is it fighting that you are avoiding that you know you no longer can afford to avoid? I want you to look real closely on the plates on that Chevy truck. They're Saskatchewan plates. This accident happened in Rollo, Saskatchewan, Dog River, Corner Gas Country. I bought it from the woman who published it in the Western Producer. I knew this was an important picture because Wes clipped it out. And Wes never clips things out of the paper. But this is the wreck, folks, that we have when we don't communicate well with each other. And my apologies to John Deere. By the way, the combine apparently was totally fine after this accident. So, You need to think about instigating the conversations with what your future heirs want. I've talked about a lot of these things already. You need to also get out of this nana nimbo land of not knowing where stuff is. It's called the neutral zone. When Wes gave me this diamond ring, we were getting married, and we did. And we've been happily married for over 30 years. But there's a lot of people who are waiting for that diamond ring, or they're waiting for that written agreement, and they can't take the stress anymore of not knowing. So there needs to be some new beginnings. And once those agreements start getting in place, the stress just kind of floats away, and it becomes a different kind of managerial stress. It's different. It's good stress. It's business stress. You guys all thrive on that deal, getting a good deal, getting the top price for your lentils, or making a new market acquisition, or building that mill in Regina, or finding a new job in Bethune along with 400 other people. There's lots of new beginnings in Saskatchewan happening. But what's not happening is people are sitting saying, oh, Elaine, we need to talk. And then 2 years goes by, and I say, are you ready yet? And they say, yeah, now we're ready yet, because Mom died of a heart attack last January. And those are the most painful calls for me to get, because they've heard me speak, they've read the stuff, they know what they need to do. You already know what you need to do, but you're not doing it. And Dr. David Cole, who I'll see next month in Spokane, Washington, his grad student did a study and found out that if you will just start meeting on a regular basis, once a month even for starters, you will be 21% more profitable without going to the bank. Would you guys all like your net worth to go up by a bit? Then start doing the work. Figure out what your communication style is. It action? You want to get things done, direct, specific. Is it process? Process people are your accountants, bookkeepers, the people who need time to think things through. They like to know what their options are, and it drives them crazy that there's no period behind the 3 on this slide, because they're into detail, okay? And then you have people-oriented, people like me, who want to talk about relationships and feelings and interests first before we get down into the hard facts of business. And then the next style would be the idea guys, who is our son in university, who comes home and says, oh, by the way, Dad, I want to have bison on a certified seed farm, and I want to grow hemp. Oh, really? What is that going to do to our combine? Well, we got the hemp, but we never got to seed it, so we'll see next year what happens. So you need to identify that just like we have different personalities, we have different styles of communication. And we have different factors affecting our emotions. For dads, it's really hard. And there's another good book called The Father Factor, which I'd recommend highly, that I wrote about if you go to my blog, because there's a lot of stuff going on for Dad. But it's his change of status. Who am I if I can't put purple diesel in my pickup? And now the new question is, who am I without a wheat board permit? But I'm not even going to have that discussion. Then there's the factors for the spouse. I mentioned hormones, but did I also mention caregiving and being tired? Then there's the factors for the adult children who just can never do things good enough for mom and dad, or feel guilty, or wonder. I had one woman say, are you okay with us having the farm? Because this is what we've planned. And the rest of the siblings actually grabbed them by the shoulder and said, we bless you, we honor you, we want you to do this. So these are the conversations you need to have. Then there's the whole ramification about being a special eagle eyes. I call the daughter-in-laws fresh eyes. When is the last time you told your daughter-in-law what a great asset she was to your farm team? There's a woman sitting in the room here who's been in Country Guide, who did that, who got that letter from her father-in-law, and it made all the difference in the world. So you need to put your words into action, because people will live for 3 months on a compliment. They're going to get resistance, though, if they don't understand. If they don't understand grandchildren's stepping trusts, if they don't understand shareholder loans or shareholder agreements, you're going to get pushback. You're also going to get pushback from the heart, which said, but if I was a good dad, I would just give you the farm. And then the dad is sitting crying at my meeting because he says, Elaine, I'm grieving. I'm grieving the fact that I don't have enough money for my lifestyle, and if my son needs to be the next generation, he's going to have to pay for this. And then there's trust. What is it in your gut that's telling you that something has to change, and it has to change now? Can you just do this for me, please? Touch your head right here. Okay? It's understanding. It's heart, touch your heart, and touch your gut. Okay? There's 3 different places that resistance can come through. What is your intent? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your action going to be? And what's the effect? My name is Elaine Froese. I'm a farmer just like you. I no longer have parents to care for. My intent is to kick your butt to act. Because if you do not act, then you're going to have a very, very hard life on your farm. And the effect of this morning's presentation is to just wake you up, to deal with the issues, to see that conflict is totally okay, and that once you get the tools in place, which I'm happy to help provide to you, and many other of my colleagues are as well in CAFA, that you are going to have the most awesome farm team. And that when you go to bury someone, you will have a rich, rich legacy of relationship. And it doesn't matter what that net worth statement says, because it's more about that money and land. Okay? Understand where you're coming from by your age needs. Understand what other people's perspective is. My time is up. It's time for questions.